Yeah, good morning, True. My name is Mike Jelliffe, and I'm a long-term resident of Papua New Guinea. You know, it's a great achievement to write a book, and it's even greater achievement to actually publish it. I remember when I first received in the mail my first book, which was a novel set in PNG called The People of the Bird. It was such a beautiful moment just to unwrap the package and have that book in my hand. But the process to get to that stage was long, and at times it was very frustrating. In fact, I felt like writing the book was the easiest part. So, having gone through the process of self publishing a book, I thought that I could perhaps help other people to do the same. And so I established Nenge Books as a small publishing business with the aim of helping other people to get their work in print. And I'm particularly interested in helping Papua New Guineans. So, here are a few tips to help you understand what's involved in publishing your work. Okay, the first phase is to prepare your manuscript properly. Now, I've found that most people who send me a manuscript believe that it's already ready just to publish. They lived the story, they've read it, they've reread it many times, and they believe that it's accurate in terms of the English language, in terms of spelling mistakes, and grammar. But my experience is that even the best authors make mistakes. So, with your own work, you'll read over mistakes and you won't see them. So, your eyes will read the mistake on the paper, but your brain won't twig that that's actually a mistake. So I found that most manuscripts that I receive do require quite a bit of editing to make sure that the language is really accurate. And to do this properly, you probably need to enlist the help of some others to read through and let you know what they found when they read it. In my experience, it's not uncommon to receive a manuscript that somebody thinks is all ready and find up to 3 things that need correcting per page. It might be as simple as a full stop. It might be as simple as a wrong word that's being used and doesn't convey the right meaning. It could be a spelling mistake. It could be that the grammar is wrong, the tenses are wrong. So there are a lot of things to look for when you do a reread and a proofread over your work. So first of all, to prepare your manuscript, once you've written your book, you need to spend a lot of time proofreading and editing it. Get somebody or several other people you know who are going to be honest with you and are going to say to you, look, you've used the wrong word here. Maybe you could express this differently. Or happy just to go through and correct some spelling mistakes to make sure that they can find as many of these things that need correcting as possible. If you send me a manuscript and I find that I have to spend a lot of time correcting things, then I'm going to have to charge you for it, and that's going to be more expensive for you. So it's in your own interest to make sure that the manuscript you send to a publisher is as accurate as possible. The next phase is to find a publisher who is willing to take on your work. Now, there are different ways of publishing a book. The simplest way is to take your manuscript to a printer who can just print off some copies for you. You'll generally find that that can be quite expensive, and the printer is going to want you to print a minimum number of books, which you'll need to pay for up front. This is how printing has been done traditionally. You end up having to pay a lot of money to get the books printed to reduce the per book price, and you end up with a stack of books in boxes that you then have to sell. And the experience of many people is over time that it's very expensive and they don't actually get rid of all their books. At the other end of the scale is the big name publishers who will only accept manuscripts that they are sure are going to make a lot of money for them. And these are the books that you see in large bookshops. They have mass printing of thousands of books and they distribute them all over the world into bookshops and things. So these publishers will take on the responsibility for making sure that your manuscript, your book, makes money. You hand over the manuscript to them and then it's up to them to take it and do what they want with it, and profit will return to you in royalty payments and other payments, contract payments that they'll make with you. Now, there's really a very small number of authors who really make it to this level, but you can always try by sending a manuscript to a big publishing company and see what they say. So a third option that sort of sits in the middle of those two is with smaller independent publishers, and that's basically where I sit with Nenge Books. Independent publishers will offer various levels of editing for which you'll pay an hourly rate usually, and an amount of money based on what they feel is required to actually publish the book. And then they'll publish your books through print-on-demand technology. Now, print-on-demand technology has revolutionised the printing industry. It basically means that your manuscript, when it's ready, goes into a computer database, and whenever a book is required to be printed, the printing machine just prints off that copy of the book. The cost is less because you're only paying for one book or the number of books that you require, so you don't have to build up stocks of books. You can order small amounts of books from one right up to thousands, and I've done both ways with some of the books that I've published so far. So for an independent author, print-on-demand publishing gives you a way to minimise your costs up front at the same time as having a book available anywhere in the world through print-on-demand distribution networks, depending on the printing company or the publishing company that you choose. The books that I publish are printed through Ingram Spark and are available anywhere in the world through their print facilities in Australia, UK, USA, Canada, Europe, and other places. So people have purchased books, some of my books, directly from some of those overseas countries. So what should you look for when choosing a publisher? Well, to start with, you need to know whether you want to just print a couple of copies for you and your family, or whether you actually want to get into print-on-demand printing through a major print facility, which is also a distribution list, which is Ingram Spark, for example, the company that I use, and there are a couple of others as well. So this enables your book to be purchased by people around the world, so you need to consider what marketing you want to employ here. Do you want the book just for you and your family, or do you want this book to be available for anyone? So you need to be clear from the publisher you choose exactly what they are able to offer you in terms of demand, a print-on-demand supply, but also in terms of marketing possibilities that they can offer you. The way I work with Ingram Spark is that people can order books through my website online. I can also order books for the author, and the author orders books from me at wholesale price. It takes about 2 to 3 weeks for an order to go in, for the book to be printed, and for the person to receive the book. It's a little bit longer in Papua New Guinea because of the time it takes with postal services. So, once the publisher has the manuscript in their hand, then they should be able to give you some sort of indication of the time it will take to produce a document and one that's ready to print. And most publishers these days will publish both hard copy books as well as ebooks. So your contract with the publisher should spell out the time constraints so that you can be fully aware of what to expect, as well as clauses which address things that for example, a publisher not meeting their requirements. So you need to be very clear that you're going to get value for money, that there are no hidden costs, and that you're able to retain your intellectual property rights, the copyright, and full editorial control over your work. Now, a recent survey that I heard about in the United Kingdom found that many independent publishers are ripping their authors off, overcharging, and many of their clients were not happy with the results. And one of the key ways in which you can protect your rights is by entering into a contract with the publisher. And I would recommend that if you have a publisher who is not willing to enter into a contract with you, that you leave them alone. The Australian Publishers Association lists having a publisher-author contract as one of its requirements, actually, for membership of the association. However, it's important to recognise that if you want a publisher to publish your book, then you both need to understand the legal and practical implications of that. A publisher will want to make some profit margin themselves because that's their business, but they should also have your interests at heart, and the contract should contain information about the royalty payments that will be returned to you. In other words, what profit margin can you expect to make from your book when sold? Do some research on a potential publisher. See what books they've already published. Find out what the marketing opportunities they have are. Read their blogs and websites. Find out what other people are saying about them. When I take on a manuscript, I start a dialogue with the author, and usually that's by email, and the editing process is one of continual communication, advising the author of corrections, at the same time seeking feedback from them on suggestions to improve. The last thing you want is a publisher who will grab your manuscript but not communicate with you. The intent of the publisher is important, and so it's important to understand that if this publisher really has my interests at heart as well as their own profitability. So a number of things that the publisher will give you indications of through the contract, including time expectations. The publisher will take your manuscript and format it into a book format. I use a program called InDesign for that, and it's easy to take a Word document and then it transforms it into a book format. Some authors spend a lot of time getting their manuscript formatted like a book in Word, but for me this is not helpful because I have to then reformat InDesign. So I prefer manuscripts to have minimum formatting. And I think sometimes some authors spend so much time on the formatting that they actually neglect some more time that they could put into the actual story itself. Now, there are a number of elements to consider here. The size of the book, how many pages, how you want it laid out, what type of fonts you want to use, especially for headings, the book header, the design of the cover. All these things need to be thought through before you approach a publisher. All these should be something that you're then continually discussing with your publisher as your book starts to take shape. I like to send the author a page spread very early on of how it's looking as I'm working on the book and to see if they're happy with proceeding that way or whether they want to have changes they'd like to make. And once the book is fully formatted, then the publisher should be able to provide you with a full proof copy before final publishing, and then the publisher will register the book with an ISB number and meet any other legal obligations that are needed. All countries require copies of new books to be published, submitted in their national libraries, and within Papua New Guinea, any book which refers to Papua New Guinea, it's a legal requirement to submit a copy to the National Library as well. So there are a number of outlets within PNG for PNG authors, and particularly books, people doing school curriculums and things like that are always looking for good books to publish. So I'm delighted to be able to provide assistance to PNG authors who may wish to publish with Nenge Books, and I wish you all the best in publishing your own work.